Honest Hearts is usually considered to be the worst of Fallout New Vegas' 4 DLCs. It's not bad or anything, but aside from Joshua Graham, it's not really the most interesting DLC, nor is it the hardest. But what if there was a way to change that? Can you beat Fallout New Vegas' Honest Hearts DLC without taking any damage? Every DLC in New Vegas has a level requirement, a level at which the developers suggest you be at before you start a specific DLC. For Honest Hearts, that happens to be level 10. Now, I could dump skill points into speech and guns and steamroll through everything, but I want to go into Honest Hearts with as bland a character as possible, so I somewhat evenly distributed my special points, picked speech, guns, and medicine as my tag skills, chose Wild Wasteland and Trigger Discipline as my traits, and began the leveling process. I used console commands to do this, to give myself the minimum amount of experience required to get to level 10. As I leveled up, I evenly distributed my skill points across all skills, aside from my tag skills. In retrospect, I should have made every skill the same, but with medicine being literally worthless, since I can't take damage in the first place, I figure those wasted skill points balance things out. Regarding weapons and armor, I'm going in with only what I can get from the DLC packs I have installed. No stopping at Chet's store or the Gunrunners to stock up on supplies. Also, because the point is to beat only Honest Hearts without taking damage, I didn't mess with my health until I got to the start of the DLC. I had a bit of a problem with some death claws and geckos on my way to the Northern Passage, but this video isn't about them. After about 30 minutes of wasted time, I finally arrived at the Northern Passage, where I could speak to Jed Masterson, convince him that I was a big, strong boy, and put what I had to into the special box to get myself down to 100 pounds of supplies. I only had 124 pounds of stuff when I left Doc Mitchell's house, so finding 24 pounds of shit to drop off wasn't all that difficult, especially since the lightweight metal armor from the Mercenary DLC pack weighs 20 pounds by itself. With my supplies set, I dropped my max health down to 1, so that any damage of any kind kills me. Told Jed Masterson that I was ready to hit the old dusty trail, and we made our way for New Canaan, which, if you're wondering, is about 380 miles northeast of Las Vegas. Or, put another way, it's a little over 24 million Cheez-Its away from Las Vegas. In the cold nights on the road, I snuggled close to Jed's beard to keep warm. The way into Zion Canyon was a one-way street, according to Stella. Luckily, I wouldn't have to listen to her run her mouth at Jed for too much longer, as we were ambushed by Whitelegs, who killed everyone besides me. I fired somewhat haphazardly into the tree line, eventually striking and killing one of the Whitelegs with one of my bullets. With the corpses of my fallen companions looted, I could press onward into the canyon. That self-confidence faded after an altercation with 2 more white horses on the west side of the bridge. Then it got trampled into the dirt when even more white horses emerged from their rocky hideout to attack me with their fancy automatic rifles. If you hadn't figured it out by now, the key to not dying when any damage of any kind kills you is to avoid getting hit by a stray bullet. That becomes nearly impossible when someone is capable of firing dozens of times in your direction in mere seconds. Whitelegs with submachine guns are essentially death incarnate. After missing far more shots than I should have with a cowboy repeater, I wasted several throwing spears trying to take out the last standing native, who turned out to be Follows Chalk. Probably a good thing that I didn't kill him. Snap informed me that Joshua Graham would want to see me. He gave me a vague idea of where to go, and we wandered off into the wilderness. I shoved a bullet up the ass of a baby Yaguai at speeds the human mind is not capable of comprehending, got a proper look at where I'd be spending the next few hours, and carefully descended down into the canyon. Fall damage is a very real threat thanks to the verticality this DLC introduces. I got a little ambitious when dealing with a rat scorpion that phased itself into a rock, got fucked by the son of Reptar, found myself a sweet new hat, entered an Eastern Virgin, and eventually made it to the Dead Horsey's camp, where I could finally meet the burned man himself. He rather quickly explained the main quest line of this DLC, escape Zion Canyon. Before I went on the world's greatest scavenger hunt, I bought a .45 auto pistol from Joshi and all the ammo we had for it, alongside a silencer and an HD slide. It's without a doubt my favorite weapon in New Vegas, because I'm a sucker for anything that looks like a 1911. I had a series of components to gather, On the way to a crashed bus, I got assaulted by a bunch of wilderness creatures, geckos, mantises, rat scorpions, and even a puppy minding its own business while looking for its brother and sister that I killed after I killed it. I found a compass in a crashed bus filled with a bunch of cute little skeletons, repaired the compass, and was now off to find walkie-talkies. Scratch that, I'm off to find a medical supply kit and some limited edition lunchboxes. They're quite a bit more than a hop, skip, and a jump away, but my silenced pistol and lack of pants made me the perfect man for the job. Chalkington and I got into a bit of a skirmish with a few white legs, but they were the melee weapon carrying variety, so not much to worry about. Closer to the map marker, I ended a puppy that was learning to swim, checked to make sure my health was still at 1 just to be safe, pulled out my shotgun, and entered Zion Ranger Station. The few bark scorpions inside weren't anything to be concerned about. I found the medical supplies, threw a tin plate, parkoured on some cars, and entered the next cabin to find the collectible lunchboxes. If you've seen a few of my other Can You Beat videos, you probably know that I have problems with the little things. Killing a mythical dragon with a kitchen utensil, child's play. Finding 5 lunchboxes, had to break out the strategy guide for that one. I'm not ashamed to say that I spent 7 minutes in that cabin. With 2 of the 3 fetch quests completed, I could get back to the important things, like tracking down walkie-talkies. They were in the Zion Fishing Lodge, alongside a few geckos and a hunting shotgun. My days of being an errand boy are now behind me. I've graduated to being a delivery boy. Daniel, in the Narrows, needs the supplies I found. It was a bit of a trek out to the Sorrows camp in the Narrows, and even though it'd been quite a while since I last played this DLC, the hatred of this area came flooding back, like a flood or something. There were all these bridges and cliffs and passageways. It's more convoluted than it needs to be. Then again, it is a rocky canyon. I gave the supplies to Danny and began making the preparations to evacuate the dead horses from Zion Canyon. Sort of. Time is of the essence, but more important than helping people is spending 25 minutes getting 3 fucking plants so a shaman can make you drink a special tea and force you to go into the heart of the island to kill a ghost bear. And by kill a ghost bear, what I really mean is that I used Fox herself with chalk as bait while I fired at the bear from a safe distance of a few feet away. There were also a bunch of Yaoguai guarding the entrance to the fire ghost bear's lair. We came to an agreement that both parties were happy with, so I could pass by. The arrangement being that I kill them and they don't complain about it. My gift from the shaman for successfully completing my trial was a melee weapon, the claw of the ghost bear. So that was a giant waste of time, what a shock. With that bullshit out of the way, I can now actually begin to do my part to help the tribe's people. And then I spent far longer than I should have trying to kill a White Legs Lightbringer with a tomahawk. I eventually nailed him with a tomahawk, which did significantly less damage than I was hoping. And despite my learning experience with throwing weapons, I did the exact same thing with a giant mantis, just with a throwing spear instead of a tomahawk. Wasn't very effective, if you can believe that. I then made my way into a Yaoguai cave, killed the bears inside, laid down a few explosives, and destroyed the entire cave system. The explosion was pretty pathetic, actually. With them dealt with, I could now take care of the real threat, the awkward white guys in shorts. The elephants in the audience may remember what I said about automatic weapons and how devastating they are when used against me. Even when I had the high ground and a grenade launcher, they are still a threat, especially when there's more than one person doing the shooting. As I made my way closer to the first White Legs camp, I found a friendly dog wandering around on its own. Before I discovered it was friendly, I'd missed 2 near point-blank shots. Obviously, I couldn't let it spread rumors about me, so I chucked the tomahawk deep into its spine and watched it roll down the hill into a river. Waking Cloud suffered a similar fate for having watched it. I ensured she could never experience the traumatizing pain of childbirth by destroying her with a tomahawk. When I found the White Legs encampment at Bighorn Bluff, I tried to use my remaining tomahawks to kill them from afar. I tried a few dozen times, and not once did I hit any of them. Once I realized how futile my efforts were, I switched to a grenade launcher and did some serious damage, but didn't actually kill any of them with it. On the plus side, after I descended down the mountain, I finally got a headshot with the tomahawk. The White Legs at the next camp were tougher because they were surprisingly accurate with their shots. Walking to the edge of the cliff was a risky endeavor, but with a final headshot, the White Legs camp was demolished, and my next task was to find a map of the Grand Staircase. Before I did that though, I sent the Cloud back to her camp, because she was making things too easy. Inside the survivalist cave, I proved yet again that the obvious often goes over my head. There was a locked door with a key hidden in a duffel bag. I spent nearly 8 minutes wandering around that godforsaken cave looking for the duffel bag before I finally found it. The holotape I found revealed that the map was back at the Sorrows camp. Back at the camp, I spoke to Daniel again and told him we'd be fighting instead of fleeing. That silly boy thought I meant we'd be fighting as a team. After I put my foot down and made the decision on behalf of everyone in the canyon, I was teleported to the river with Joshua Graham now acting as my companion. We were going to wipe out the White Legs together, but before we did, I went back to the Narrows to see if anyone was left. A few Sorrows were, and after a bit of internal contemplation, I began killing them all. It was all Daniel's fault, really. I only wanted to kill him, but he doesn't spawn out of nowhere unless you make enemies of the Sorrows, which also happens to upset Joshua, causing him to leave. As I finally got to kill Daniel, who was tougher than I expected thanks to his automatic submachine gun. I stripped him naked and left his body to rot in the sun, alongside all his friends that he failed to keep safe, and pushed onward to the Caterpillar's Mound to begin my search for salt upon wounds. That was a lie. I already had Daniel's clothes. I wanted Joshua Graham's bandages. I wanted to see the burned man in all of his glory. I went back to the Dead Horses camp, slaughtered the few tribespeople outside Angel Cave, ambushed those in the cave with a grenade launcher, and waited for the stragglers to exit the cave where I could pick them off with my silenced handgun. With the Dead Horses now having a somewhat relevant name, I could push through the cave until I didn't reach Joshua Graham. He's not there. Again, he's the only one who needed to die, so all this blood is on his hands. Back outside, I killed 2 more Dead Horses and stood there for a while, thinking about what to do next. Once I leave, I can't come back. So I fast-traveled to Ranger Substation Osprey so I could see what kind of treasures lied within the Whale Tail Canyon. The Dead Horses and White Legs in the river didn't put up much of a fight. I picked them off from a distance with my hunting rifle. As I got closer to the center of the Whale Tail, I noticed some piranha plants having a long-distance orgy. They did their job though, because a spore carrier sprinted towards me at Mach 10 and caught me off guard. My quick save was when it was a few feet away from me. The Cowboy Repeater is more or less a BB gun on steroids, meaning it's useless. The only firearm that packs enough of a punch to kill the carrier is the hunting shotgun, but it's so quick that I didn't have time to pull it out. Not that it would matter, because not even a critical shot will kill it in one hit. I'd finally met my match, an unwinnable situation. I pussied out, reloaded a prior save, and made a beeline for the southern passage out of Zion Canyon. The path is long and treacherous, as every tribe now hates me. I killed a Painmaker and caught a glimpse of the Big G in the sky, who manifested himself as a fire axe floating in the air. That voodoo shit has no place in Zion, so I chopped up the Painmaker so that if there is an afterlife, he'll be a cripple in hell forever. There were several more White Legs waiting to take me out as I got closer to the passage. An explosion blocked off a path with a bunch of boulders. A small path led to 3 Mary's Cavern that had a few more White Legs in it, most of which weren't too troublesome to deal with. Outside the cavern, enough tribals to form a small army were positioned between me and the end of the line. The ones with automatics sucked, but the rest weren't that bad. There was one man left, a living legend, superstar Joshua Graham. Not only is he a walking tank, he'd make Hawkeye look like a toddler with a Nerf gun. A near-perfect shot with a grenade rifle did practically nothing to him, and even with a handgun, he killed me damn near instantly the second I took a step towards the edge of the cliff I'd found myself on. I spent several lives trying different tactics to kill him. I was lucky in that he'd been damaged in a prior conflict before I found him. It soon became clear that conventional methods of warfare would not be enough to stop the burned man. I put down 5 frag mines and carefully lured Graham up the cliff where I'd been hiding. The earth trembled with every step he took. I should have put more thought into my plan. If he survived being lit on fire and being thrown into the Grand Canyon, a few mines wouldn't be shit. All 5 mines went off and it didn't stop him. My position was now worse than ever. He's sprinting towards me, an angel of death, and I was just sitting there in my underwear hiding behind a rock. The thing is, I'm not as stupid as I've led myself to believe I am. I thought back to the tactics the White Legs used against me, surprise attacks with automatic weapons. I stood up from behind the rock, took aim at Joshua's head, and didn't stop firing until his body lay motionless in the dirt. I stood over him, looking down at what was once thought by many to be a Wasteland legend, and saw the life fade from his eyes. The burned man was no more. I followed the river until I saw what remained of Joshua's final act of vengeance. Salt upon wounds, and his commanders lay dead on the ground. It was at this point I realized all the death and destruction I'd wrought, since I found the map of the Grand Staircase was completely unnecessary. I could have just fast-traveled back to the Southern Passage and left the fate of Zion in the hands of those who'd once called it home. I took one last look at Zion Canyon before I turned my back on it for the last time, returned to the Mojave Wasteland, and beat Fallout New Vegas' Honest Hearts DLC without taking any damage. And that's going to do it for this video about whether or not you can beat Fallout New Vegas' Honest Hearts DLC without taking any damage. If you enjoyed the video or learned anything, leave a like. Leave a dislike if you didn't enjoy the video or didn't learn anything. Join the Mitten Squad Discord server through a link in the video description. Follow me on Twitter @Mitten Squad. My name is Paul of Mitten Squad. Have a wonderful day.